Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Mondays Down South. It's been a while. I think we've all enjoyed our holidays thoroughly and definitely have taken a little bit of a break from the podcast, but that's good because it's a new year, new us. Good chance for us to refresh, come back with some hot content. And the NFL season, regular season at least, just concluded and finished up. So it's kind of the perfect time to give you our thoughts on a couple of stories and headlines and talk playoffs with y'all. However, I wanted to start this episode by just wishing everyone a very happy new year. I hope 2023 is amazing for all our subscribers and listeners and to everyone out there. And boys, I'm very grateful to be able to do this podcast with you guys as we progress throughout the year. So much love, brothers, and that's how I'm going to start this off. Zach, Evan, what do you guys have?
I'm proud of you, Cy, man. It was a great holiday season. I had the luxury of seeing both of you guys over Christmas break, but Cy, really proud of you, man, because you didn't destroy both your ankles when we were playing one-on-one basketball at your gym in DC a couple weeks ago. So he had his Kyries ready to rock and roll, and they protected his ankles at will when I was crossing them up left and right. So, Cy, that's great, man. Glad you're healthy, and hopefully you stay healthy throughout the course of this year.
Hey, listen, I won't dispute the fact that you got me on a couple of moves, but I also am pretty sure you did a full 360 on one of mine too. So let's make sure we mention that one as well when we talk about
360. I don't know about that.
I'll leave it there. I'll leave it there.
We'll see. I like it. We about to see for real another month. I'll get in that mix and we'll see what happens. But yeah, happy New Year, everyone. Good to have NFL playoffs back. Yeah, not too much else to add. All of our teams are out, but that means we get to be fully unbiased and just enjoy the fun, right? So
I love it. Zach's Super Bowl pick really panned out for me this year. As a matter of fact, I'm blaming this whole season on Zach.
Dude, that's rough.
Thank you for picking
that.
Me.
Was so rough.
It's actually like hilarious. I maybe that's a good place to start. We can roast my team for a little bit. Ev kind of hit the nail on the head at the beginning of the season, so I got to give him more credit as due. However, I think we were all wrong about the AFC South. So I guess we're starting with the worst first. We were all wrong about the AFC South because we should give a huge shout out to Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars for pulling together an incredible season, and a huge shout out to Doug Peterson, who I think got slept on quite a bit after the Eagles situation after he won a Super Bowl. For them being able to bounce back and go win the division and enter the playoffs, no matter what happens in the playoffs, is a massive success for them to bounce back the way that they did. So shout out to them. Tennessee, absolute catastrophe for the second half of the season. I think they lost 7 straight. And, of course, my Colts with the number 4 overall pick and also appropriately 4 wins. I want to give a huge shout-out to the Houston Texans and to Lovie Smith for completing a 4th and 20 in a game where they had the number 1 overall pick bagged up. They decided to make the biggest play of the season and score a touchdown, and not only score a touchdown, but then also proceed to go for 2 to win the game and ultimately lose out on the number 1 overall pick. We can talk about draft picks and stuff later. However, that was a masterful performance in the sense of I've never been more excited about my team losing, given how it might impact our future. So that's my quick synopsis of how terrible my team was, that we finished second to last in arguably the worst division. Not even arguably, easily the worst division in the NFL. So there's a good tee off right there.
Yeah, on the draft picks, I was thinking about this. Didn't a similar situation happen between the Jets and the Jaguars the Trevor Lawrence year? Or am I making that up? It was the exact same. The Jets had it in the bag, and they won a game they shouldn't have won at the end of the season. And now they're stuck with Zach Wilson instead of Trevor Lawrence. Thinking back, how big is that? So we'll have to see. I mean, it's a similar situation. Like, Bryce is the clear 1-1, and then I don't think either of those other guys are really, like, number 2 candidates. I mean, the way Stroud played in the college football playoff, maybe, but, it's been inconsistent otherwise. So we'll have to see. But, yeah, shout out to the Jaguars. But, I mean, realistically, would they finish 9-8? In the worst division in the NFL, they won an easy one. The Titans were playing with Malik Willis and eventually Josh Dobbs down the stretch, and they still should have won that game. So I mean, tip the cap to the Jags. They got a chance to win the first game, as we'll talk about later, but a good season overall. But I'm not overly impressed by them.
Zach, I'm curious. Evan made this point, so I'm curious to get your perspective. I personally think Young is easily my 1-1. However, I think Stroud has a potential and possibility to be very solid in the NFL, especially with the way he finished out the season. However, I want to get your thoughts on that because I think that's a good topic of a discussion because right now we do have the top 14 in the draft laid out. So I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are. I think obviously Carter and Anderson are easy top 4 picks. Whatever two quarterbacks don't go, like whoever doesn't pick the quarterbacks, I think's got to go Carter and Anderson. I don't think any of us disagree with that, I assume. However, I am curious to see what your thoughts on Stroud versus Young or just in general what your thoughts on Stroud are.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a couple of NFL scouts on our podcast, and they could not have disagreed with all of my NFL draft takes, more vehemently before. So I'm not sure how much weight this carries, but I would stay away from Bryce Young. There's something about he's insanely talented. There's no denying that. But I am very much a CJ Stroud guy. I think his height and weight is more built for the NFL. I think Bryce Young, it gets a little jittery in the pocket, and he creates plays. I mean, he reminds me of Russell Wilson, but Russell Wilson just seemed to have a larger arm coming out of college as well. So I don't know. There's something about Bryce Young that just makes me a little bit nervous in terms of a franchise leading quarterback. His speed, I think the NFL will catch up to his speed. And I think CJ Stroud is a little bit more disciplined, has a better arm, has produced more in terms of this season, in my opinion. I know Alabama kind of they had a couple losses that prevented them from getting to the college football playoffs. But overall, I would probably lean Stroud, but I'm not a huge fan of them the way I was when Lawrence came out and Justin Fields. That was the pinnacle of quarterback draft classes when we had 5 drafted in the first round or something like that. But I don't know. There's something whoever's going to pick 3rd and 4th this year, in my opinion, is definitely going to win the draft with Will Anderson and guys like that. So that's probably my synopsis based on those two guys, those two QBs.
I would just want to say this, and I'm going to say this now because the draft is 3 months away, so I'm going to get ahead of this. I think Bryce Young is a future Hall of Famer. I'm saying this right here, right now. I think Bryce Young will be one of the best quarterbacks drafted in the last decade. And I'm saying this because if it wasn't for his size, his evaluation in the sense of his ability to throw the ball from the pocket, his ability to create plays, and his preference to throw the ball prior to running, even though he can run, and his ability to do it on an Alabama offense where obviously they're not deprived of talent by any stretch of the imagination. They have great receivers. However, it's nowhere near the level of receivers that a Stroud or prior Bama quarterbacks or prior Georgia quarterbacks or any other team, LSU, whatever you want to talk about, have, because Bama is not loaded with those receiver weapons as prior years. And Bryce Young put up some of the best statistics a Bama quarterback has ever put up on that offense, and arguably on a lesser Bama team than we've seen in years. And that's just from the college perspective, but I just watched the guy throw the football, and I think he's a better passer than Russell Wilson. I am making very bold statements, but I'm saying this because I like Stroud, and I personally would be very happy if we ended up getting Stroud. If we don't pick number 1 overall, we don't trade up, we get Stroud, I'm very happy. I'm just speaking from the lens of the Colts because we're in a position, so it's easier to evaluate that way, in my opinion. However, I think Bryce Young, I would give up 2 first rounds and something else for just to move up to that pick, genuinely, because I legitimately believe that if it wasn't for height, which I think in the modern NFL you can overcome by being smart and by being decisive, I think Bryce Young would get so much more love. I think we're looking at a future Hall of Famer. I can't say that enough. That is a genuine future Hall of Famer, in my opinion.
I don't have a ton to add. I lean closer to Zach's end, though. I think he's maybe a little overrated, but not to the level that Zach said. I think he should definitely go 1-1 over these other guys. My only take is that Will Levis is trash. Will Levis is going to be terrible in the NFL. Jake Locker vibes, that kind of energy. That's my only draft take for the moment. But
okay. Well, going back to the NFL, I think this season for me was this story of a lot of it's kind of like mini Cinderella stories throughout the course of the season, right? So the Detroit Lions going 9-8, somehow missing the playoffs, right? So the storyline was there. But overall, missed it just by a hair to really no fault of their own there coming down to that last week. Went into Green Bay, beat them in Green Bay, which was huge for that franchise, especially the last 15 years. And they also swept Green Bay this year. So not only did they knock their arch nemesis in the NFC North out of the playoffs, but you're seeing a lot of growth from those teams, right? I mean, even the Jets, right? The Jets were known for certainly choking the season away there, but Robert Saleh with a massive amount of wins that I don't really think anybody expected for the New York Jets, winning 8 games or so. And then also the Jacksonville Jaguars really starting to make some strides in the AFC South where, based on how this season looks this year and next year for them, you could really say with the aging Tennessee Titans and the Indianapolis Colts that are trying to figure it out, who they're going to draft at QB, the Jacksonville Jaguars are just going to get better each and every year. So you could say that they come back. And then on top of some of those teams that really had been at the bottom of the totem pole the last 5 years that have pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, I mean, what about that story with Hamlin and the Buffalo Bills? I mean, really glad to see that he's been released from the hospital and he's okay. But just seeing the entire NFL community rally around one player to just show at the end of the day, hey, this is about our personal health and, that we need to prioritize that over the game. And that really at the end of the day, it's just a game. That was really, really cool to see, not just with his team supporting him, but the entire NFL. And I mean, could you write a story better than Naheem Himes running that kickoff return back to the house in Buffalo, throwing up the 3 sign? Like that gave me goosebumps for days, and it was probably a top 5 NFL moment I've ever experienced. And then he did it again later in the game. So what a wild finish, and curious to see your guys' thoughts on that.
Yeah, shout out to Damar Hamlin. I just want to say that real quick. I honestly probably should have opened the episode. I'm just so happy he's doing better and back in Buffalo and such. Obviously, we love this sport. We love this game. It's part of what we do this podcast for. However, moments like that are certainly ones that remind you that at the end of the day, it's a game and it's human beings out there. So I know we like to be critical. I know we like to overanalyze and such, but moments like that are profound. So I'm just really happy he's okay and hoping he makes a full recovery in the very near future. And regardless of whether he returns to NFL or not, it's one incredible man. And just the story of him waking up and the first thing him saying was, "Did we win?" is so beautiful. I got so much respect for a man like that. So shout out to Damar Hamlin. That's all I got to say about that, because that's very true and very beautiful. I'm glad you mentioned it, Zach.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I guess I got 2 takes overarchingly on the season. One is the shift in power back to the East in both conferences. NFC East gets 3 teams in the playoffs, almost 4. Same with the AFC East. They get 2 in, but they could have had 4 as well. So kind of a shift in power. And then I think this was another year. We've seen the trend of you can't win without a young, good quarterback, or specifically, kind of a quarterback that's on, a team-friendly deal. I think this year, more than ever, all 5 of the contenders in my book, which I'll talk about later, have, homegrown quarterbacks. And you see like the Russell Wilsons of the world that tried to go out and get the veteran like the Rams did, and one with Stafford, and it just did not go well. So, if you look at all the playoff teams, they pretty much all have that homegrown quarterback.
So I will say something about that, Ev. We were talking about this offline a day ago. I do agree with you in the sense of the modern NFL, with an exception. I think the exception is a lot of the quarterbacks that were used to being veterans who are capable of winning or have won have just gotten too old, really. I think that's part of why we say that, right? Because I was just going to point to Stafford. He just won the Super Bowl last year as a veteran. Thing is, he got hurt and obviously didn't play as well this year. Guys like Brady, who obviously have, been in the GOAT conversation for a long time. He's like 45 now. I mean, people like Drew Brees and such retired. Obviously, Manning retired a long time ago. And then you've seen the regression of other guys. Like Rodgers obviously didn't have a great team around him. So I think right now that's the case. However, I just think we're waiting for a new class of veterans to really pop up, because I also disagree with that, because obviously if you could go get let's say a Justin Herbert in a trade to a team that's somewhat competitive, I think, as an older player, when he is worth more money, I still think they can win, right? So I just think right now that's the state of the NFL. I think we're shifting generations, and the young, youthful guys are the ones that are taking over as, that next generation. But I think I think the league has a way of recycling. And like in 5 years, it'll be those guys holding the reins and doing the same thing. So that's my personal take on that.
So what does that mean for Washington then? Because you have a homegrown guy like Taylor Heineke that was leading you guys to the playoffs, and then you guys decided, I guess because of playing ability or lack of offensive production, whatever that means, despite the fact that he was 6-1 at one point as a starter for you guys throw Carson Wentz back in, and then Carson Wentz proceeds to do exactly what you thought Carson Wentz was going to do, taking a team, robbing them of $20-something million, and then making them or pushing them out of playoff contention. So, Evan, I guess any ideas or any thoughts on I guess what transpired there for Washington Commanders and who deserves the fault for it? Should Rivera be fired? Obviously, your OC is going to be gone, but who is the QB for Washington next year?
So it's all kind of up in flux because of the ownership situation. So Rivera will stay because like Snyder's not going to fire a guy on the way out. And then the new owner can't come in and fire a guy in March, right? Because you don't have any time to hire a new coach. And I think that's fine because he's actually built like a pretty good roster. He just is terrible at in-game decisions. Scott Turner got fired today, which is huge. He was a disaster, just a complete nightmare. And in terms of the Wentz decision, yeah, that's probably going to go down as like one of the worst coaching decisions I've seen in the last decade. With that said, like, I get it. I get why they did it. And the advantage is now Carson's not the answer. Because if you play Heineke, say he, at best case, probably makes the playoffs, lose first round. And then you're sitting there, well, we paid this guy $30 million. We believed in him. And we didn't really get to see it. So you have the risk that they're actually going to bring him back next year and pay him $30 million, which would have been a disaster. So at least now you know. And for me, next year, I'd love to roll in with, you got to re-sign Heineke, which not sure how happy he is right now after getting benched, so that could be problematic. But I think Howell deserves a shot in camp to see what he's got. Like, he played well in Week 18. The coaches seem to love him, and he has the right skill set for what we need offensively. So I would love to see a Heineke, Howell, and like another mid-round draft pick quarterback room and just see what you got. I mean, obviously it's not going to like win a Super Bowl or anything, but I think Heineke is good enough to make the playoffs with our roster, as he would have done if he had the full year this year. So that would be my plan.
I do want to give a take on that because I was actually going to bring that up, and I'm glad you did, Zach. Two things. One, I love Riverboat Ron, and I think I really hope he finds success going forward, whether it's with the Commanders or not, because he's just a stand-up dude and a leader of men, right? Thing is, though, modern NFL, if you guys were going to go on record all year, holding Frank Reich accountable for what happened with the Colts and, them not having had much success in the sense of playoff wins and even making the playoffs, even though we did make the playoffs a few times, then I think we have to hold Riverboat Ron on the same level of accountability, because I would argue our teams are very comparable in that sense. It was his decision-making. If you think that Heineke was the reason that you guys didn't make the playoffs, it was his decision-making which was one of the catalysts for you guys not making the playoffs. And you guys, similar to us, up until this year where we screwed the pooch altogether, have been stuck in purgatory as well, right? Because even the one year you did make the playoffs, similar circumstances. So I just want to see the same level of accountability across the board. And I personally think that you might be right because of your ownership situation. It might be circumstantially different. However, I personally think if we're going to say somebody like a Reich should move on to somewhere else, then I feel the same way on the flip side. The other thing I will say is if I was a betting man right now, and, obviously Ev is more plugged into Washington's decision-making than I am, and I hope as I say this, I don't think this is the right decision, but I think this is a decision that's going to happen. If I was a betting man right now, I'd put my money on Derek Carr with the Commanders next year. Because I just think if you look at the teams that need a quarterback, the Commanders are the ones that have a mid first-round pick. They're not going to have the capital, or they're not going to want to use the capital to trade up as high as they can compared to other teams. And then you look at the roster and you're like, wow, we have a great defense. We have Chase Young coming back. We're going to be loaded on that front. We have good receivers and weapons. They proved themselves this year. Offensive line played fine enough. Good run game between Robinson and company. When you have all that, it's really hard for a team to be like, all right, let's just sit. And it might be the right decision. I might actually agree with Evan on this. I think you're better off just giving Howell the opportunity. However, I think it's really hard for a GM and especially a new owner to sit on their hands if they feel like, okay, I got to go get somebody to improve. And I think not that I think Derek Carr will win him a Super Bowl, but he's definitely the name that stands out more than I Howell and Heineke, right? So I bet you he ends up there. Not that he should. I just want to clarify. I don't think that is the best decision. I just think that's what's going to happen personally.
Yeah, you do add an element where Ron might be desperate because, like you said, and I've been saying for the last 2 months he should probably be fired, but like with the whole ownership thing, like just let him stay on because he has, kind of the pulse of the clubhouse. It's fine, but he might be kind of desperate. Like I need to get in the playoffs, and that might encourage him to go get a veteran. So I wouldn't be shocked, and I like Carr, so I wouldn't be like mad, but I do agree with Cy. It's the wrong decision.
I don't know. I think it would be the right decision because if you don't invest in a player like that who has a proven track record of being successful, being in the playoffs before, leading a team that was once 12-4, a pretty, underdeveloped Raiders team, I guess that was quite a while ago. But the reason I think it's the right decision is because Washington, based on their cap structure, is in a win now opportunity where if they continue to play this quarterback carousel and they get cute with that for the next 2-3 years and it's full of mediocre seasons and stuff like that, Daron Payne's going to walk, Chase Young's going to walk, that defensive line, you're not going to be able to pay all of them. A lot of the defense that you built from the ground up with amazing draft acumen will inevitably leave you if you I just think that's why Derek Carr needs to be signed somewhere. I think there's going to be a couple of teams that are interested in him, including one team in Washington's division, the New York Giants. But I think ultimately Washington, if they're able to sign him and they have the defense, it's already well structured, already well set up. They have one of the best defensive lines in football when healthy. They've got two amazing receivers as well as a slot guy in Curtis Samuel, as well as great running backs and an okay offensive line. They are in a win now strategy, in my opinion, and I just don't want them to botch that. And speaking of which, when have we ever seen in an NFL season multiple quarterbacks just walk from their team? I witnessed it with Marcus Mariota on the Atlanta Falcons, who just quit halfway through the season. He said, I'm done with this. And sadly, he wasn't the only player that did that on the Falcons this season. We also had a defensive tackle that just threw his hands up in the air. He said, this team is terrible. I'm done. I'm going to get into the carpentry or something like that. Who knows? Or baking. And then we also saw with Derek Carr and the Raiders, which I understand a lot more because I feel like he got the short end of the stick there. But have you guys ever witnessed – I mean, this has just been a crazy year for a lot of different reasons.
I feel like Vontae Davis really set that trend a few years ago or in a little while. And that's still one of the funniest stories I've ever heard. I will say something, though, Zach. I think you mentioned the Giants. Daniel Jones, I'm pretty sure they've already said they're re-upping him or working on re-upping him. So he'll stay. There's no way they're going for Carr because they just made the playoffs with Jones. And whether he should be their quarterback of the future or not, it's pretty hard for you to move on from a player. Like, for example, if last year the Colts made the playoffs with Wentz, we probably wouldn't have moved on from him because you can't. Like, just perception-wise, it's like unless you're going to get like Aaron Rodgers like a year or two ago, or you're going to get like, I don't know, somebody who's clearly like a top 5 to 10 quarterback in the NFL, you're not going to move on. So the Giants aren't going to move on from him. This is why I said Carr to the Commanders, because if you look across the state of the NFL, teams who are competitive for a playoff spot, if we were a mid-round, like if we had a mid-round pick again, like let's say we won 8 to 9 games again, then I'd say the Colts would very much be in that conversation, right? Like it'd be like the Colts and the Commanders, because the Colts and Commanders are very comparable. They're two teams that for 4 to 5 years now, like whether one team's been better than the other, regardless, it doesn't matter. They're two teams that have been fringe playoffs every year. Some years they've made it, some years they haven't. They have good defenses, but they just don't have a quarterback, and they play the quarterback game every single year. And so Carr, the only situation that makes sense for Carr is the Commanders. I can't think of anywhere else.
So there's multiple teams.
Like,
think about the Saints and the Panthers, two teams that have great defenses that you could argue are in win now mentalities. They just need a QB to get them
I'm
there.
tired of the Panthers talk, Zach. I'm so
we'll just
tired
say
of
the Saints.
it.
The Saints,
You've been saying they're in a win now mentality for like 5 years, and they have not come close to
the
winning.
Panthers went 7-10, and they lost their starting quarterback, their running back, and they still managed to go 7-10.
He goes win now, bro. What are you talking about? Get out of here with that nonsense.
The Saints, though.
I love it.
The
though.
Saints.
They gotta go young.
See, the problem is Washington.
Saints is a fair
draft capital.
Saints is a good point. I didn't think about the Saints.
You don't have to trade for Carr because he's so disgruntled. He's just gonna force him to cut him, which is nice. So you're just gonna have to sign him. So here's my scorching. I do think there's gonna be a lot of openings that come up. You guys ready for this just scorching out of thin air quarterback carousel take?
Let's go.
That I came up with? Well, so first off, Brady is going to Vegas. That's not scorching. That is like a lock. Mm-hmm. My complete out of the dark, out of the blue take after last week, Aaron Rodgers to Detroit, because I think Goff is a free agent.
Dude, you don't want to do that. You don't want to do that. Jared Goff is an above-average quarterback.
He played great
about this, and Aaron Rodgers is.
You know what, Zach? I got to tip my cap. He is, granted, okay, I still don't think he's top 12 like you said, but he is top 15. I'll give him that. Zach came out and gave me he gave me a Jared Goff as a top 12 or top 10 take, and then everybody at the table, for context, was like, Zach, you're out of your mind, bro. And then we went down the list, and then every time we would like go one more quarterback, okay, then Zach would be like top 13. Then we get to 13, he'd be like, okay, top 14, until we got to like 17. So I just want to clarify how this happened. But Zach, that's fair. I will say I didn't give him enough credit. So I got to, and it's the reason I think I was so opposed to giving him credit is because I used to argue the opposite with Evan. Like when he was still on the Rams, I don't know if Evan remembers this, but when he was on the Rams, Evan would be like, Jared Goff sucks. Like he's the worst. Not the worst, but he would obviously not be a big fan of Jared Goff. And then I would defend Goff and be like, he's not that bad. He's a game manager. Like he can win games. So it's almost like I've been floating on what is he good or is he bad? But he is perfectly league average or a little bit better.
Hey, Jared Goff is a top 22 quarterback. That's all I got to say.
You got to block for him, but anyways, we should move on.
Any more? Any
other
ones? I like this. That was a good one. I like that. Any other ones you have?
Before we jump, I do want to address what Evan said though, because that is a scorching hot take. Aaron Rodgers to the Lions. Okay, I definitely don't see that happening because
I'd be surprised too. But
the guy's not going to leave Green Bay to go.
Oh no, he's leaving.
No. Hear me out. I'm not saying he's not leaving. I'm saying he's not going to go from arguably the second coldest place in the NFL to the coldest place in the NFL, like right next door, to torture himself in the freezing cold again. I think if he leaves, he goes to, not unfortunately, but with Trey Lance coming back, I don't know. I think San Francisco is like literally the perfect situation for him if he goes there, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think he goes somewhere else that's like a team that could go win the Super Bowl next year. Or else, what's the point of him playing? The Lions aren't ready to win a Super Bowl.
I think they could be close, but yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if it happens, but that's just something I came up with. I think San Francisco, we got to get to picks, but I think San Francisco's in a perfect spot with Lance and Purdy as the backup man.
They are.
That's almost like a dream scenario.
But if Rodgers says, hey, I want to come next year, do you say no? I'm just curious. If you guys are Kyle Shanahan and you guys are the 49ers and you know right now with Purdy, you're a potential Super Bowl contender right now with Purdy. And then you know Rodgers is down to come play with you with that offense you already have built, and he'll take a pay cut. Are you really going to say no?
Yeah, you would say no if you're Shanahan because there's just two aggressive, dominant personalities, and I just don't think they would mesh well together.
The whole point is that, I mean, sure, if he takes like a huge pay cut, you don't have to pay him much. That's a different story. But the point is that he's going to command like $30 million of cap, whereas Lance and Brock aren't. Like, that's your Carr point, Zach. Like, if we go get Carr and pay him $30 million, then we can't keep Deron Payne this year or something like that. Mm-hmm. That's the whole idea, is that you're not paying rookies much, so you're building out the rest of your roster. Yeah, it's tough to turn down Rodgers. The side's probably right there.
They're not going to say no to him.
Yeah.
Because,
anyway,
dude, if he goes to the 49ers, they're immediately Super Bowl favorites. Like, even on a down year, Rodgers was still solid this year. I think people don't realize how rough the team around him was. Like, they didn't give him anything to work with, and he did something. I'm telling you, if he goes to the 49ers, they're, like, immediately Super Bowl, like, favorites are right there with the top two. So I don't think they'd say no. Anyway, but that's besides the point. I don't want to keep getting off topic. Evan has brought up the picks a few times and our playoff bracket. So if you guys don't have any other points,
let's get into it.
Yeah. We'll start up on Saturday. Seahawks at 49ers. The Seahawks somehow snuck in. San Francisco -10 at home.
Oof. That's going to get ugly.
Go ahead.
That's going to get ugly.
Oh, you want me to go first? All
right. Go first.
I'm going to go with San Francisco. However, I don't feel incredible about the cover. I think it'll be San Francisco. I think they will cover, but I think just barely. I don't think – look, listen, Seattle's played great. There's a reason they're in the playoffs. So I'm not going to disrespect them, especially because I like Purdy, but Purdy isn't, I mean, he might be better than Garoppolo. So I'm not going to get into that. But Purdy is, an all-star quarterback. So that's all I got to say.
Yeah, I'm going to go. I'm going to go. San Francisco covers that pretty handily, just because Brock is doing everything that Shanahan wants him to: be a system quarterback, listen to the offense, and let Shanahan's genius offensive scheme work in full functionality with the star players. So I've got them covering 10. Ev, what about you?
Yeah, I think it's a blowout. 49ers easily. Move on to the night game Saturday night. Interesting game here. The Chargers are going to Duval County to play the Jaguars. Spread is only Chargers -1. Zach, what do you got?
Oh, this is such a tough game because I love both of these teams, but a healthy Los Angeles Chargers team on the road. Give me the Chargers I guess it would be money line, right? Or are the Chargers -1?
It's 1 point. Yeah,
okay,
1 point.
Also, they cover that away.
All right. This one's so tough to me. I'm very tempted to pick the Jaguars to pull this out, but they didn't really play that well last week, so I should take the Chargers to win on the road. Si?
Yeah, I think the dream for Lawrence ends here for this year. However, bright future ahead. I take the Chargers, and the other thing I want to point to real quick with the Chargers is, man, I got to give them props because they played in a tough circumstance, and with James and their I can't believe I'm forgetting the name, the other corner that they re-signed getting hurt this year, and them playing through that.
Guy.
Yeah, and them playing through that as well as all the injuries they had on their offense. I mean, that team making the playoffs in that circumstance is so impressive. So I got to give Herbert and the Chargers a huge shout out for that.
Sante Samuel Jr.
He's
nasty though, but Ev, move on. You got it.
I was going to say, the one thing, the Jaguars played the Chargers this year and beat them by like 50. Now, that was a very long time ago, like when Sai said when they had a lot more injuries, but
wasn't that when Herbert shouldn't have been playing?
Oh,
maybe actually.
Was that game where like Herbert was hurt and then they started him for some reason and he like
still does. The Jags just ran down their throats for like 200 yards though, which they could easily do again. So, anyways, got to move on to Sunday afternoon. Dolphins at Bills, super interesting game. Unfortunately, the Bills could have been the 1 seed, but they are stuck here playing the Dolphins. They're 9.5-point favorites, which I think is because Tua isn't cleared yet. I'll start us off. Obviously, if Tua doesn't play, it's a blowout, and they easily cover the spread. I'll say the Dolphins cover if Tua plays. 9.5, I assume that'll be closer to a touchdown, but I do think the Bills win this one. Should be good weather, too. Si?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Kuna, go. You got it.
I was just going to say, if Tua was healthy, this would not be a shock if Miami won this game, because in both their competitions this year, Miami has won one, and the second one, the Bills and Miami were super close till the very end in that snow game or whatever. So the thing is, if Tua's healthy, I expect them to cover because I don't want to disrespect Tua in Miami. However, it's hard to pick against the Bills right now, especially in winter in Buffalo. It's got to be Bills for me.
Yeah, I got to go Bills, and I think they cover that spread too, just because Miami has not been playing great as of recently. Now, obviously, they've been plagued by some injuries, concussions, all that. I think Tyreek even had kind of sustained like another minor injury to his ankle or to his lower body. I've got the Bills. I'm not overthinking that. I think they win and cover pretty handedly.
Yeah, Tua can't play in the cold. I'm beating that drum.
That's right.
Giants at Vikings at the 4:30 game on Sunday. It's in Minnesota. Minnesota's only a 3-point favorite. I think Sai, you're up.
Yeah, I'm going Vikings. I know Ed has zero faith in the Vikings. However, I think the Vikings will win this game, and I think they'll cover.
I'm with Sai here. I'm not overthinking this one either. I know Minnesota has played some close games. In fact, they were 8-1 at one point, and they had a negative point differential from getting blown out by the Cowboys, if you guys remember that. But I actually was really excited to pick against them, especially if like Detroit was playing against them or something. But I think stylistically this is not the best matchup for the Giants. The Giants like to slow the pace down, and I think Minnesota's just going to play full systems go. They're going to fire from the start. So give me Minnesota -3.
The Giants sneaky played fantastic down the stretch, including almost beating Minnesota. I think they get it done here. The schedulers did do a favor to Kirk Cousins by putting this in a kind of non-primetime slot. Giants money line though, I think they pull the upset. I've been saying the Vikings are losing first round for about 2 months now.
Who wants to watch Minnesota, New York in primetime anyway? So I don't think the schedule is doing them a favor. I think the schedule is doing us
They did us a favor too. But We'll move along here to Sunday night. Ravens at Bengals, a rematch from last week. Again, kind of questionable if Lamar is playing. Cincinnati's got a 7.5 point advantage on the spread. Zach, what do you got?
I'm not overthinking this one either. I'm going Bengals win and cover. I mean, I know they just played each other. These teams clearly don't like each other. They're not fond of each other at all, but I just think the offensive juggernaut that the Cincinnati Bengals bring to the equation. Cincinnati Bengals defense is going to be here to shine, and especially if Lamar doesn't play, that's going to get ugly really quick. I think the Bengals put up 30 and win.
Yeah, I think the Bengals murder them.
Or sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, even if Lamar plays, I think the Bengals kill him.
Yeah, forget the defense for a second. This just isn't fair to Lamar because even if he comes back from injury, like, he's not just going to come in and be the Lamar of usual. He's going to be rusty.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not going to be a fair matchup. And the Baltimore defense is nowhere near where the Baltimore defense was in prior years. They just lost to the Steelers with Kenny Pickett. No disrespect, Kenny Pickett, great way to finish out the season. However, the Bengals offense is going to go they're going to go ham. Like that. I mean, just last game, I don't know if you guys saw the whole Burrow exchange. He apologized to Higgins because he threw a touchdown to Chase when he missed in the prior one. That offense is on all goes with cylinders, so I'm excited about them.
Shout out Joe Mixon for the hilarious coin toss celebration last week.
That was great.
That was awesome. But I do want to talk about coin tosses a little later, though, after we do the last wildcard game. This game is going to be horrendous football. Dallas at Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay gets to play at home because of winning probably the second worst division in the NFL. Dallas is a 2.5 point road favorite after losing by 3 touchdowns to Washington playing their backups. This one starts with me. Dallas has to win this game. It will be as embarrassing as they've been in clutch moments over the last decade. This would take the cake. This would be a loss that could get everyone on the entire organization fired. Obviously, including Mike McCarthy, including Dak. This has huge stakes for them. So I think they find a way to get it done. I think last week they just were scouting Tampa Bay a week in advance because last week's game didn't mean much. So I just don't think they really were scouting Washington and were prepared for that game. So I'm going to say they find a way to get it done because Tampa Bay is terrible right now. But man, if they lose this one.
Is it just me, or is Tom Brady very much looking forward for the season just to be over? That man needs to take a vacation for 6 months. He is aged 15 years in 1 year, the poor guy. So I think that Dallas is going to put them out of their misery pretty quickly. And Dallas has played very inconsistent as of late, which is a little concerning, but I think that makes it an arbitrage spread opportunity. Now, I think they played each other the first or second week of the season, and Tampa Bay did win in Tampa Bay. So, I guess you could keep that on your track record, but overall, I'm not overthinking this one. I think Dallas is just going to play well right from the start. They have way too many offensive juggernauts that are not washed up, that are not getting paid too much money like those guys in Tampa Bay. So, give me Dallas.
Yo, E, question for you. What was the spread again?
2.5 Dallas.
Okay, I like that. So I'm going to pick Dallas to cover the spread. I don't think Brady's ready for the season to be over, though. You guys know me. I'm not the biggest Brady stan ever. However, it's playoffs. You never know what's going to get into him, and he's at home, whatever else. So it wouldn't shock me if the Buccaneers pulled this off, especially with the inconsistent play of Dallas. However, the flip side to that, though, is I think Dallas, with their recent inconsistencies, people are sleeping a little bit on how much talent they have. And they're a team that could lose to anybody, but they're also a team that I personally think can hang 40 or 50 on anybody. So with that being said, I'm going Dallas to win this and cover it. And I'm trying not to sleep on them too much.
Same conversation every year, though. They always do the same thing. Man, I cannot imagine if they lose this football game. But all right, so let's go through the rest of the playoff bracket a little bit. Let's, I guess, maybe start out in the AFC. We'll just do top seeds chalk, and then if you guys have a particular sleeper team that you want to mention as potentially being in these games, then bring it up. But I guess assuming chalk out of the AFC, the 1-4 matchup would be, well, you'd probably have Chiefs and Chargers based on our picks at Arrowhead. So, Sai, what do you got there?
I don't love this for the Chiefs. I don't love that they'd have to play their division rival here because I think they'd prefer not to play their division rival. However, I guess if your choice is between the Bengals, the Bills, and the Chargers, I guess you'll take the Chargers. I'm obviously going to pick the Chiefs. You guys know me. I pick the Chiefs every single week forever. So I am going to pick the Chiefs. However, again, the Chargers are healthier, and I think them playing a division rival, that game is going to be closer than I think the Chiefs would like. But Mahomes is playing like a real MVP and genuinely just has only gotten better in the sense of decision making and being clutch. So I expect the Chiefs to go out there, and I think Tony is back healthy finally. And expect him to be a difference maker this playoffs because I don't think he's made a ton of noise yet because he had a good game, then he gets hurt, then he comes back. I expect him to actually make a huge difference for the Chiefs in the playoffs this year because he is an absolute game breaker when he's on the field, and Mahomes can really, really exploit that, I think, against the Chargers because their secondary is beat up.
Zach?
AFC, give me the Denver Broncos versus the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to have to hang my head here, but maybe make up for it with the Chargers beating the Chiefs. That's actually my pick. I think for some reason I just do not see the Chiefs in the Super Bowl this year. I'm not sure if it's like the losses of talent like Tyreek Hill and whatnot. They've still played great. I mean, obviously their offense is still running very seamlessly. That play that they ran against Vegas last week was hilarious where they did like the ring around the rosies into like a wild formation. I've truly never seen something like that before. It makes me love Andy Reid even more. But the Chargers, they have the Chiefs' number, and they've beat them each of the last couple seasons with Herbert at the helm. So they split with Kansas City, I'm pretty sure, this year. I think so. Or maybe they lost in OT. Regardless, I love the matchup
I don't think so.
of Derwin James covering Travis Kelce. I think if Derwin James can play his best football, I think that really, really takes a lot out of the sails for the Kansas City Chiefs. So why not? I'm going to go the Chargers upset in Arrowhead.
Isn't Derwin James out? I thought he was out for the season.
I thought he got removed from a game because of a head-on collision, but I think he was in the last game.
I think he might be out.
Zach's right.
Yeah.
No, Zach's right. He was out for a while, and then he came back and got ejected from that game, which was
right. But yeah, he's healthy and stuff.
That's a Zach. If that's the case, that's a game changer for sure. I mean, I still pick the Chiefs, but that's a really good point because I thought he was definitely out. So that's a huge change in opinion of even making it even closer. However, I don't know, man. I don't think the Chargers have the Chiefs number personally, but
the Chargers are good. The Chargers defense are good.
They beat him once is the thing I think Zach is hanging his hat on. They did beat him, I think, maybe last year they got him once. But
it was last year in the regular season, I think. However, I will say, Zach, real quick, because I know we don't want to spend too much time on this. When you mentioned that line, all I could think about when I saw that was the O formation you used to run in backyard football. So I had to give you a quick shout out because that was the closest thing to the legal version of the O that I've ever seen in my life. So shout out to you for that. But cool.
I love how you thought that we were skilled enough with our football lingo to even call it the O formation. We just called it the circle. Sometimes we called it the blob.
We called it the circle.
So for the audience that doesn't know, it's essentially the entire huddle would get together of all of us like middle school kids. And the defense would be sitting there like, what the heck are these guys doing? We'd get in a circle. It would be at this point where like we're getting ready to go to the Stonebridge football game. So it'd be like pretty dark outside. No one can see the football. And then I would say hike, and all of us would spin in different directions, and nobody knew who had the football. So there's that. But I think the Chiefs maybe ran it a little bit better than we did, just a little bit.
What
are you talking about, Zach? You were definitely in the Mahomes of our backyard football league. So.
He thought he was. He thought he was. Anyways, moving along to the 2-3 out of the AFC it'd be Bills hosting Cincinnati, which I think is interesting. The Bengals were freaking out. Obviously, all that matters here is that DeMar is healthy, like I mentioned earlier. But now the football implications. The Bengals were infuriated that the Ravens game would have been a coin toss for home field. If I'm them, I'm infuriated that this game isn't going to be at home in Cincinnati or at least a neutral site because the game that they had to cancel would have decided who gets the home game here. So I'm shocked they're not maybe more upset about that, or maybe they will be when this game comes around. But I think the fact that it's going to be at Orchard, I'd probably go with the home team on this one because I thought the Bengals were on their way to maybe winning that game a couple of weeks ago. But if it's going to be an Orchard, I'll take the Bills.
Go ahead, Zach.
That's tough, man. I'm so much higher in the Bengals than I was earlier this season or even last year, but they're just a well-oiled machine right now. They're rocking like a 7-game win streak or something crazy. However, Tre'Davious White is back. Joyner is back. a lot of the defensive members for that Bills unit are healthy and they're ready to play. Give me the Bills at home. It's going to be a really close game, but I just think Josh Allen is going to do wonderful things, and Stephon Diggs is going to be a part of it. So give me the Bills.
I want to root for the Bills, and I will root for the Bills. However, I'm picking the Bengals. I just think they got the juice, man. They got the juice. And there's just something about Burrow when the playoffs or any sort of big moments come around where, like, I think he needs to have one special moment every single year he's in the playoffs. And I think the special moment will be beating the Bills in Buffalo, especially because I think they will be a little bit amped up after not being able to finish that game and not getting home field. If there's one player that I'm not worried about, especially a young player, regardless of whether it's home or away, it's Burrow. That guy, nothing phases him. So I got the Bengals personally.
And to Sai's point,
I'm going to root for the Bills this year, though. I just picking the Bengals.
And to Sai's point, every single win from last year's run was on the road. Go to the NFC. We should probably pick up the pace here a little bit. The 1-4 would be the Eagles against either the Bucs or the Cowboys. Does anyone have the Eagles on upset alert?
No, Eagles.
Maybe Eagles against Bucs or Cowboys.
Yeah, it'd be Bucs.
Oh boy,
likely.
Oh boy, you guys are not going to agree with me on this one. If they play the Cowboys, who I picked to win, I definitely have the Eagles on upset alert, and especially in a divisional matchup, especially with, you know what? Screw it. I'm not just going to say I have the Eagles on upset alert. I'm picking the Cowboys over the Eagles. You guys might think I'm crazy, but I watched that matchup earlier in the year, and I have every inclination that offense can figure out a way to hold up against that defense, and I think the Cowboys defense can do enough. I would pick the Cowboys in that, actually. I know it's crazy, but I'm going with it.
I would have agreed maybe earlier on the season, but after the way they closed and the Cowboys, it's just so on brand with the Cowboys. But Zach, any dissension from that? Although my game would actually be Giants-Eagles because I think the Giants upset, so that would be a blowout. But anything else on that one, Zach?
The only other thing I have to add is
I
love Sai's direction there, but I think the reason that the Cowboys would fall short is they wouldn't be able to establish the run game that they do in other games, because I just think those big head honchos up front with Fletcher Cox running that unit, it's just going to be tough for Zeke and Tony Pollard to get going. So I think the Eagles would take that one.
So the other game would be Niners and Vikings. I think the Niners will beat whoever they play in this matchup.
Niners.
I agree. Niners.
So then switching back to the AFC, then you're at either Chiefs-Bills or Chiefs-Bengals. I personally have the winner of the Bengals and Bills game. Now, note, different stadiums. Chiefs play at home against the Bengals, or they would play neutral site against the Bills. I have whoever wins that matchup actually beating the Chiefs. The Bengals, for whatever reason, have the Chiefs number. They've beaten them 3 straight times. And then the Bills, I think they've kind of surpassed the Chiefs. They beat them in Arrowhead this year. And I think they get it done.
I'm going to go back on my answer of having the Bills beat the Bengals. I think Sai's barking up the right tree. Give me the Bengals over the Bills in a close game, because I want to see this Super Bowl. I want to see the Eagles versus the Bengals. That Super Bowl for me would be like icing on the cake. 2 very similar style teams going at it at the highest of stages. I know I'm skipping a couple of games here, but I just recently thought of that. That's the Super Bowl matchup I want. So I'm just going to go with that answer.
Sai, how about this? Give me your whole Super Bowl matchup then.
Yeah.
All right. Well, at the beginning of the year, I made it very clear I got the Chiefs in my Super Bowl, even though I said they'd play my Colts, which I was completely off on. However, I did pick the Chiefs to make it to the Super Bowl, and I'm sticking with that pick because I have been a Chiefs truther from the get-go, and I just believe Patrick Mahomes is the greatest player in the NFL year in and year out, and I think they find a way to do it again. And I shouldn't even say find a way to do it. They're the best team in the AFC this year. There's a reason they're the 1 seed. So, and that's the best conference. So I think the Chiefs make the Super Bowl. However, I think they have a rematch with the 49ers of the past a few years ago when Zach and I watched together in Austin. I think that rematch is going to go down. And so that's what I have as the matchup. I don't know if you want to hear my winner yet, so I can save that till
you can save it. I got to do NFC as well. Or no, did I say the Bills? Anyways, the Bills are going to play. Yeah, the Bills are going to play for tomorrow. They're going to make the Super Bowl. NFC is super tough. I think that's going to be an amazing game. But for me, when I think about the Super Bowl, I like to envision it happening, like me sitting down there watching the game and like what makes sense to me. And like, what doesn't make sense to me is like sitting down to watch a Super Bowl and Brock Purdy being in it. I just don't see him going to Lincoln Financial and beating Jalen Hurts, who I definitely do see playing the Super Bowl. So I'm going to stick with the 1 seed there, and I'm going to say I got Bills, Eagles in the Super Bowl. Bills, Eagles. Zach, did you pick NFC?
Yeah, I'm going Eagles.
You got Eagles and Bengals?
That's
yeah,
right.
You said that. Sai's got Chiefs and 49ers. I'll start off with my winner. I picked the Bills to win preseason. They got tough road in their conference, but I think they're going to play for tomorrow. I think they're going to win the Super Bowl this year. They're going to get over the Chiefs hump. I just think it's their year here.
Give me the Eagles over the Bengals.
Go ahead, Theo. Eagles, Bengals?
I think the Eagles
right,
beat
cool.
the Bengals. I think the Bengals lose 2 heartbreakers in the Super Bowl, so that's what my pick is.
I'm picking Brock Purdy and the San Francisco 49ers. I didn't think I was going to do this. Actually, 5 seconds ago, I was going to pick the Chiefs, but something in me just came over me, and I was like, the way Kyle Shanahan wins his first Super Bowl is going to be with Brock Purdy, and it's going to be epic. It's going to be Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brock Purdy, company, the whole defense that's been dominant, Bosa. I'm excited about this team, and they're going to win with Brock Purdy against Patrick Mahomes. Nobody's going to be able to beat Mahomes until he faces Brock Purdy. That's what I got. And I will say, though, I'm still rooting for the Bills to win it all because I'm rooting for DeMar's team, but that's just what I have.
That's a
fun.
pretty bad decision right there, Sai. We will let you we will give you the opportunity to change your opinion if you want.
Nicely done, Zach. Nicely done.
You would appreciate that.
I'm here for it. I'm here for that. Attaboy.
I love it. Well, I think that's all, boys. Any last words before I close it out this week, maybe?
Shout out Georgia for absolutely dismantling TCU. I don't even think they should mention their name in the news for the next year because that has got to be one of the most embarrassing displays of football I've ever seen from a national championship contender in history. You can't go beat Michigan and then go to the playoffs. I understand Georgia's probably the better team and the more talented team, but you cannot lose that game 60-something to 7. The fact that Georgia covered the spread by themselves.
The total.
They covered the total spread by themselves in the national championship. That is so unbelievably embarrassing and continues to prove to me why the Big 12 is the biggest joke of the conference in the history of college football. You guys know I've been on this take for years, but it gives me another opportunity. I was making fun of my Austin friends because Texas continues to embarrass themselves in a conference that sucks, and now they're leaving to come to ours. So shout out to Georgia for basically obliterating the Big 12. That was just embarrassing. And I don't mean to be rude. I usually have sympathy for teams, but come on, man, you can't do that in the playoffs. So I just want to throw that out there real quick.
Yeah, only thing that I have, maybe not as much of a vendetta as Sai and I have against some of these teams that clearly shouldn't be there, but are deserving so according to these analytics that Evan follows. But man, I'm getting sick and tired of people playing pickleball. Pickleball left, pickleball right. Everyone's opening up pickleball courts. They're getting the pickleball paddles. I'm sick of it. It's so dumb. It's a lazy way of playing tennis. People aren't even working out. They're just drinking beer, hitting this wiffle ball looking thing. I'm so done with the pickleball phase, and I could not be more excited for that to end. Hopefully in 2023 it does for good.
Dude,
Sorry, go ahead, Evan. Go ahead.
There's a pickleball little court in the park, or just a park that they play pickleball at all the time, right outside of that window. So every Saturday and Sunday morning, I wake up to that stupid little dong little sound that it makes. I'm like, dude, this is so ridiculous. But
for the first time ever, I'm hoping that subscribers. I doubt most listen to the end of the episode, but this episode more than ever, I'm hoping that subscribers do not listen to the very end because I expect Evan to check the subscriber counts, but I would not shock me if we lose 5 subscribers based off that comment alone because pickleball is just sweeping through the nation and y'all just decided to roast it on here. It was dumb. That was not smart for marketing.
Hey, bad publicity is good publicity, Si.
Fair enough.
All right, I'm gonna take the last word to as much as TCU embarrassed themselves last night in Georgia. I don't even know how it's possible to do that. You don't even beat an FCS school that big. But like to go from not ranked in the preseason to winning a game in the college football playoff and having a chance to play in the national championship, I want to ultimately give them their props on an incredible season despite last night being a disaster.
True. That's fair.
But with that said, thanks everyone for watching or listening, YouTube, Spotify. We promise we'll keep up with you throughout the rest of the playoffs and into the Super Bowl, and maybe do a little vlogging Super Bowl weekend when these guys are up in New York. So stay tuned for all that. Thanks again for watching and listening. That was Mondays Down South.